Douglas Ross, leader of the Scottish Conservatives, MP for Moray since 2017. You had a normal job before you entered politics. You were a farm labourer. So will you indulge me in asking you this question? I can't think of anybody else how I would ask it. How many cows do you reckon you've milked?
Oh, many. I mean, I loved it. I did it for years. My dad was a farm labourer, so I was brought up on the farm that he worked at. And from the earliest years I can remember, that's all I wanted to do when I got home from school or at the weekends. I've got an older sister and a twin sister. I'm a twin, and my two sisters just wanted to do stuff around the house or homework, and I just wanted to be out on the farm. So yeah, I couldn't even begin to calculate how many.
And I read that you sometimes watch clips of cows to relax.
Yeah, my wife doesn't really like it. So I mean, I was big into showing, so I had pedigree cows myself. I've done a wee bit of judging in the past, so I like to see these big American or Canadian shows where you've got the creme de la creme of the Holstein world. That was the type of cows I like. But yeah, it sounds a bit sad and boring when you say it out loud, so I probably shouldn't repeat that. So.
Let's talk about the SNP leadership contest, which is going to conclude the day after. This interview is broadcast. Do you know, you must know the candidates personally.
Mm-hmm.
Could you be friends with any of them?
Well, I'm not friends with Nicola. I think that's been well reported. Her and I have a very frosty relationship. I think it comes from both sides. I know all the candidates probably better than I know Nicola. Hamza Yousaf is obviously the current Health Secretary, and I've done a lot. We've had a big issue in Moray with the maternity services, which has affected my own family, and Hamza Yousaf has had many meetings with me and discussions about that. I know Kate Forbes quite well because we came into the Scottish Parliament together in 2016, and when I was a minister in the Scotland office, she was a junior minister in the Scottish Government, so we had a number of meetings together. Ash Regan, I don't know quite so well. Obviously, she resigned from government to take the same position I did on Nicola Sturgeon's GRR bill. So the three of them will all be very different, and we'll wait to see who's announced tomorrow.
Could you imagine having a drink with any of them?
Possibly. You know, it'll be interesting because it'll be a very different style of politics than we've seen from Nicola Sturgeon over the last 8 or so years.
Tell me which one, as the leader of the Scottish Tories, tell me who you're hoping not to win because you think they'll be really successful. Well,
I don't think any of them will be successful because they've all said they're going to put independence front and centre.
Well, they're the SNP. Come on, let's give them that.
But the problem is everything else gets ignored. The health service that Hamza Yousaf's in charge of, the economy that Kate Forbes is in charge of, all of these issues are far more important than independence, but that's all they're speaking about.
Douglas, I don't believe that when you're in private chats with your colleagues, you don't say, oh gosh, I hope X doesn't win, because they're a bit more formidable.
Genuinely, and you know, this isn't a politician trying to be evasive or anything, they're all very different. So for different reasons, they will bring challenges and opportunities for the opposition parties, and I look forward to seeing who's successful and who will be facing at First Minister's questions. And
you do have a feisty relationship with Nicola Sturgeon, as you said, in fact, just a couple of weeks ago. She said that you would never reach the dizzying heights of mediocrity.
Yeah.
Does that sort of language, does it hurt in any way? Is that part of, is an acceptable sort of, bit of banter in politics?
Interestingly, that question came about because I was quoting Kate Forbes back at the First Minister, and Kate Forbes had said that Nicola Sturgeon's government had been pretty mediocre over the last few years, and we couldn't continue with more of the same. So I agree with Kate Forbes on that, but I often see Nicola Sturgeon just deciding to ignore the question I've asked her and just go for a personal attack, and that normally tells me I've got under her skin, which is successful from my point of view.
And you're not standing at the general election to be elected as an MP again next time.
Yeah.
Are you going to focus all your efforts on Holyrood as a member of the Scottish Parliament?
Yeah, so when I became leader of the Scottish Conservatives, I had just been re-elected to Westminster in the 2019 election. This was August 2020, so I made a commitment that I'd serve out the rest of my time as MP for Moray. It's my home area, the only place I've ever lived and worked. My own family are there now, and I wanted to give that commitment. And at the next election, I said I would step down, and I will continue as an MSP for the Highlands and Islands and party leader.
What will you, if anything, will you miss about those green benches, about Westminster?
It's the history. It's everything that surrounds you. You know, I've had the great privilege of being a minister, speaking at the dispatch box, where prime ministers currently and for decades before have stood up and given very important statements and speeches, and on the backbenches. You know, I remember when I came in 2017, Ken Clarke was the father of the house, and I remember watching budgets when I was younger, and he was delivering these budgets. Obviously, on our benches at the moment, we've got more former prime ministers than ever before. So, you know, there's a lot of history on those benches, and it's you know, it's an amazing place to call your workplace.
I bet you won't miss the commute, though.
I won't. You know, we're filming this, and it took me 5.5 hours today from door to door. Last week it was 7.5 hours. There was a bit of fog at Inverness Airport today, so yeah, there's a lot of challenges. But even, you know, Edinburgh Holyrood's 3.5 hours from home as well. So there's, you know, if we could get a parliament up in Elgin or Murray, I'd be very happy about that. But I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
So we talked about you being a farmer before you entered politics. You've also got other interests. You are a football referee. Talk to me about how you felt during the Scottish Cup tie when you were an assistant referee during that game, and a banner was unveiled. It was aimed at you. It was sufficiently offensive that I won't read exactly what it said, but Douglas Ross is a 4-letter word. How did that make you feel?
Well, interestingly, before that, there's a bit before the banner that says VAR decision confirms. Douglas Ross is a 4-letter word. And, you know, the ironic thing was it was just after a VAR check for a goal that I had awarded to Celtic. And not that I would excuse the language or the banner in any way, but if I got the decision wrong and I needed VAR, then I could understand it. So it just seemed a bit strange. They'd obviously well prepared to unfurl it. And I didn't immediately notice it. And I heard this huge cheer going around Celtic Park, and I didn't know what it was about. Sometimes if there's simultaneous games, it can be a score in another game, but I knew we were the late kick-off that night. And then I caught it out the corner of my eye, I saw it, and I just got on with my job, because I was there for 90 minutes to support the referee, in that case Stephen McLean, to make sure the refereeing team got our decisions right, and thankfully I did that day. You know, I got through the match with no controversy apart from that, but on the pitch, you know, I had a job to do and I did it.
No hurt?
No, not really.
Really?
I suppose for me it's more how it impacts my family.
Yeah.
You know,
tell me about your family. Do you have...
Yeah, so my wife's a police officer.
Right.
You know, she has an extremely stressful job, and at times I want to go home and unburden my job and things that have happened in refereeing, and I think, well, she's been dealing with some pretty serious stuff herself. She's a sergeant in Elgin, so it's one of the areas I represent, and we've got 2 wee boys. And I think for me, thankfully, they're at an age they've got no idea. You know, my oldest is 4, my youngest will be 2 in June, so they don't know. You know, the only thing Alistair, my oldest, knows is that, you know, I run the line, and when I say I'm going off to football, he starts running sideways up and down the house, which is great. So I think he's maybe destined for a refereeing role rather than a playing role. But yeah, you know, my parents, you know, see stuff on social media and ask me about it. So it's more the impact it has on my family.
Do they feel hurt? When they ask you about it, can you give me an insight into how they put it to you? Is it worth it, do they say, or why do these people say this about you? Yeah,
I think, I mean, you know, I've been in politics now for a long time, locally and nationally now, so, you know, I think they understand things are going to be said about me, reported about me, that hopefully they disagree with. I think they do, but I tend to be, you know, I don't get too wound up about these things. So if they ask me, I just brush it off and move on to the next thing. So maybe I should open up a wee bit more. But yeah, you know, in the cold light of day, you don't want anything like that to be written about you. And I think I would say, you know, the SFA, the Scottish Football Association, have been very supportive. My head of refereeing, deputy head of refereeing, got in contact very quickly. And what I don't want to see is a trend being set. You know, if people somehow think it's acceptable to say that about me in a game I'm officiating at because of my job, the next time it's going to be about another referee about a decision, and that would be completely unacceptable.
And I don't understand the rules of football like you do.
Because they're laws. Laws of the game.
Presumably, like, it would have been possible to detect who was holding up that banner. Does anything happen?
Well, I know, I got an update from the Scottish FA last week that there are ongoing discussions about it. It's a significant banner, so there were people aware of it before it got unfurled, but that's totally out of my remit. I go to my games, I officiate them to the best of my ability. I'm fortunate to be, officiating games at Celtic Park, at Premiership grounds across Scotland. It's something I'm very proud of, that, I do officiate at the highest level domestically, and I've done it for a long time, and I want to continue to do that, despite what some of the fans might think.
Good for you. Last year, you got a horrible email. Why not do the honourable thing and end your petty existence? That was the content of an email you received. Who was it from? What happened to them? How did you feel when you got that?
Yeah, it was from a constituent who'd been in touch about a number of things, and I was going back and forth and trying to respond to his correspondence, and he was just becoming increasingly erratic with what he was asking about and saying in his emails. And I remember it was very early one morning, I think, from the top of my head, it might have been like a Monday morning, and I was sat in the airport at 5:30 waiting for my flight, and I saw this had been sent at 2 in the morning or something, and he said what you said, and then I think he went on to say something like, and if you don't do it, someone older and wiser will do it for you. And to me that just went beyond what I've accepted as rough and tumble of politics and people disagreeing with you in the past, and I just decided he may genuinely think there are people out there that should take that action against me. So I spoke to my office manager, who's a former chief inspector in the police in Murray, and we reported it. And again, I think I'd sent it to him. He started work at 7:30, 8 o'clock or something, and then I thought, well, Crystal, my wife, will be going into work, so I better tell her as well, because I don't want her to say, or to be told, oh, Douglas has received this email by her superiors. So I've always got one eye on the impact it's going to have on her as well. So we reported it, the police dealt with it very professionally, as did the local courts, and he was found guilty and given a community sentence. And I just think, I get lots of abusive emails, sometimes, unfortunately for my staff, abusive calls at the office. I think some people think politicians and their staff are fair game. Clearly we're not. But when it gets to that level, I think you've got to take some action, and I think we're right to report it.
Do you think the punishment was appropriate?
I mean, I wasn't involved in the whole case, if there was background reports and such like, so I don't really get involved in that. But for me, the important thing was, I think he accepted, I think he said he'd maybe been drinking and he shouldn't have sent it. But the fact was that ended up in my inbox. I read it. Whether there was ever a serious threat or not, it was the implied threat that I think puts people off of politics. Why would young people, anyone, get involved in politics if they think at some point, while they're trying to represent their constituents, they're going to have their life threatened? Final
question. Nicola Sturgeon, her incredible term, or her incredible tenure at the top of Scottish politics, is coming to an end. Can I invite you to say something nice about her? Yeah, absolutely. For one very good reason, that we had a bet on together and she's still got to pay up. I bet that she wouldn't be the leader of the SNP come the next election, so I want to make sure I get my money out of her before she leaves. But, it's an incredible stint at the top of Scottish politics. She's not just the longest serving First Minister that Scotland has had, she was the first female First Minister, and I think you've got to accept the huge strain that will have placed on her and her family, and she's done that job, she believes, to the best of her ability, getting the key decisions right. At times I disagree significantly with her, but she has held that very prestigious post for a long time, and she deserves credit for that. How much money does she owe you? £100. Oh. Hence why I'm keen to get it. To donate to a charity as well. I've agreed to do that. Pleasure. Douglas Ross, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.